Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar titled Student Engagement in Distance Learning. We are very pleased that you are joining us. I have my colleagues Neetu and Richa who are going to be leading this session, and I have my colleague Priscilla. She and I are going to be facilitating, moderating this session. Before we get started, I wanted to show you all one website that we have put together to display all of these resources. If you go to the main LaGuardia website, there is a section for faculty resources, and this will open up a page where we are uploading all of the recordings of these webinars, including this one. We're going to make this available via YouTube, and we're going to link all of this information right here on this page, and I will make sure that I email this to all of you as well. My colleague Priscilla is also on the call, and Neetu, I'm sorry if I stopped the sharing for you. You can go ahead
That's okay.
and start sharing your content as well. Priscilla and I are going to be moderating the chat if everyone is on the computer, and if you see at the bottom of your screen, you will see the chat button. We encourage you to, as we move along, to post questions or points of discussion so that as we move along in the session, we will make sure that we bring this up to the presenters. Priscilla, would you like to say something quick before we get started?
Just hello.
Great, fantastic.
And welcome.
Yes, yes.
Hi.
We hope that everyone has been doing well. And now I will turn it over to you, Richa and Neetu.
Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So I will have to share my screen. So I'm going to share that. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So the topic that we are going to talk about is student engagement in distance learning. So my name is Neetu Kaushik, and my colleague Richa Gupta. Hi, Richa, from Natural Science Department. And I'm from Social Science Department, and we would like to, talk about student engagement in distance learning. First of all, I want to keep this session as more interactive. And please feel free to provide any suggestions that you would like to add. And if you have any question also, please feel free to ask at any time. And we would like to keep it more interactive. So let us start. So as many of us have already started our online classes, and some of you are having good experience and a few problems. And those problems, one of them is about the student engagement. Sometimes, students don't check their email. Sometimes students don't come to the live classes, and then students, are not completing the assignments. So those are the questions that are coming up. So recently we also started listserv, and in the listserv email, we are getting a lot of questions based on that students are not replying to their emails. What can we do? Is there any other way of communicating with the students? So communication is the key, because if we are unable to communicate with the student, it is very hard to know what is going on, why they are not attending the live sessions, why they are not completing the assignments. So when it becomes distance learning, the instructor, a point of communication with the student is all those online platforms. That would be like email, that would be like announcements, that would be like, discussion board, through live session, audio and video, also virtual office hours. So those are the options that we have that can keep the students engaged. So that way we will know that if the students are struggling with something, if we can offer them some kind of support or advice or refer them to some external resources. So that is a very important part of the online or distance learning education. Now, not only the communication between the instructor and student is important, but it is also important that we provide a platform to the students in distance learning that student can also communicate with their peers, because that is possible in face-to-face classes. Student can communicate with their classmates before the class and after the class, and that way, they can also work in the groups. They can try to help each other understanding some of the concepts, some of the questions. But that part, can be difficult in distance learning. But just to assure you, there are tools that you can use where the student can also communicate with each other and get that kind of help that they were able to get when they were taking the class face to face, because that is very important element of engagement. Then also my advice would be to refer the students to the college community and the resources, because most of the services that were available to the students, such as library services, wellness services, career and development office, and advising and transfer office, so all those services that were available, now they are available online. So anytime student have any question, now their main point of contact is the instructor, but you might not have answer to all those questions, so you can definitely refer them to the college resources and let them know that even though they cannot go there in person, but those services are still available to a great extent online. So not only just the classes online, but those services are also available online. Another way of engaging the student is through external resources. So for example, I teach economics, and in my class, I use Federal Reserve website and I play a game there. And in that website, student enter the forecast, and that's kind of game. So students are able to play that game with their peers, and then they, look at the results, based on what the Federal Reserve has posted, their results, of those forecasts like GDP, unemployment rate. So all those kind of interesting thing can be done. So in your courses you can do something like fun activity like that. There was another webinar that was posted by one of our colleague about some of those fun activities. So I highly suggest, if you are interested in learning about those fun activities, that can also help the student to be more engaged and have fun while learning, because they must be bored in home right now, so you can do some of those fun activities. Then also, I will suggest to provide success tips for the class, because students don't know about this online, or distance learning mode of, education if they haven't taken any online class. So it is also important that if you could provide or make a list according to your course and according to your expectations from the student, maybe make a list. For example, I make like a list such as, please make sure you log in into the Blackboard like twice or thrice a week. Check your email at least once a day, and have a dedicated study time for this course, and make sure you complete your assignment, put that in your calendar, so that they are engaged, and they know that they are not lost, and they know that what is going on. So those success tips, you can remind them few times over the time. So it is important to keep reminding them. That also keep them engaged. So going to the next slide, in an online and distance learning format, the content delivery, the way we deliver the content is very important, because again, we are not meeting them in person. So we are providing them everything online. So one of the elements of providing to make it more effective is micro learning. Instead of providing all the content at once, I will suggest, provide them and deliver them into chunks. So that is called as micro learning. So instead of making like video that is hour long, maybe making videos like 10-15 minutes, because according to various studies that has been done, micro learning is a very effective way of engaging the student and to have their attention, maximum attention. Because what happens is that if there is a material that is way too long, even in the article, you can divide that into parts, because if you deliver them like 15 pages article, they might be discouraged. But if you might provide them into like 2-3 parts, after every 1 or 2 page, maybe asking them like some few questions, and that way they can go to the next part. Having some connection in between can really be helpful. Another important element to keep the student engaged is to provide them the same content in different formats. So for example, when I record my video and I use my PowerPoint, I also make sure to post that PowerPoint without my voice. So that students who do not want to listen to the video or watch the video or audio, they can just go over my PowerPoint. That is just fine, because that might be quicker for them, so that is another way of doing it. Maybe you can also provide the handout that you provide in the class, just like you do. The same thing can be done, so that also keeps the engagement going. Because many of my students take a printout even in the live classes, and they write their notes. Whenever I actually tell them, this is very important, you might want to write it down. So when you're having the live class, I tell them that you might want to take these notes, these are important, and just checking in between. Also making sure the accessibility, if you have a student in your class who needs accommodation, you might have gotten letter from the disability office. Even if not, if you can make it more accessible, that is very important. It's not just about the accommodation, but also we need to keep in mind that many of our students must be using like mobile devices. So try to provide your content in a way that is accessible through mobile devices, because many of our students might have limited laptop which they might be sharing with their family members. So it is quite possible that they might not have access to the laptop or computer all the time, so they might be trying to work on their mobile devices. So any content that you provide that can be accessible through mobile devices would be great. That also keep them engaged, because phone is mostly we have our phone all the time with us, so they can just quickly look at it and see what's going on and refer to the resources you have provided. So that becomes more accessible, and that keeps the student more engaged. And then also consider asynchronous options. We presented another workshop based on the various options that you have for asynchronous model. So consider also that, because as we discussed before, many students might be having internet issues, slow internet, not having the computer because they are sharing with their families. So also consider having a synchronous option. Try to record your lectures that you're providing, live lectures, and also provide them regular updates. Any thing that you have changed in your syllabus because you went from face to face to online distance education. So also provide them any kind of changes that you have made in your syllabus, any kind of changes that you have made in your assignments. Just provide them those updates. I will also just suggest that providing them in advance whatever you are planning to do in the course. Although I don't suggest providing all the material all at once, but at least provide them a tentative schedule about the possible due dates, and also let them know there might be a change depending upon the need and pace of the class. So the regular updates about those things are very important, so to keep the student engaged. Now, another suggestion I have is to make your, make your class and assignments and content more application based, because that really keep the student engaged. So for example, in my discussion board, I asked the students, to provide examples with what is going on right now. So many of my students, try to look at the, various resources, news sources, and the various government websites and also research websites, and they try to provide, find those kind of information and try to share with, with not just me, but also with their peers. So having those kind of platform, they can really help. Try to connect with the reality, and having a lot of real world examples, can be very helpful. Also, another suggestion is to have case studies, that can be very interesting. And if you can provide references to the recent development. Actually, I asked my student in my discussion board to provide references, any useful references that they want to share with their classmates, and I gave them points for that. So that can be very helpful also. That makes it's more application based and keep the student engaged, because they really, students are very interested in learning the current things that's going on related to their course. Richa?
Okay, so very good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. To begin with, I would just like to share with you some simple steps that we can take during our online class sessions to foster student engagement. Because it has been a sudden change for all of us, whether instructors or students, we all signed up for in-person classes. So it can be a real shift for our students. And in the last 2 weeks, I have conducted my classes online using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And I've actually really begun to like that platform because, it offers so many great features. And, the feeling has been from both the ends. Even my students have started liking it. They say, Professor, maybe in the upcoming semester, we'll look for an online class, So I would just like to share some features on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra that we can use to stimulate student engagement in the class. So there's a feature of hand raise option, so I would say we should periodically use this hand raise option, from asking simple questions like, let's say when you share your PowerPoint file for teaching the course content, We can ask the students, can you see the slides now? You know, because maybe earlier they were seeing your video. And can you show me a hand raise? So, you know, it keeps them attentive, and you also ensure that they are able to hear what you are saying. They are able to see what you want to show them, you know, for covering the course content. Also, I would say, you know, if there was a difficult concept that you have explained, again, you know, using the hand raise option, it looks very simple, but it has come in very handy for me. Because, you know, if in the class of 24, let's say even 21 are attending the online class with you right now, and 21 hands raised, but, you know, you do not see the 22nd person raising the hand, then, you know, I call out the name and I say, you know, have you not understood the concept? Should I explain it again? And that actually helps to even motivate some of the shy students to speak up, you know, because transiently they can unmute themselves and they can ask for clarification. Besides this, you know, the hand raise option, I think the another great feature which Blackboard Collaborate Ultra offers is creating polls. So, you know, we can use simple questions like a yes or no type of question or multiple choice question, and you get responses from your students within seconds. So again, you know, this would keep them engaged as we are, you know, progressing on our class lessons from one topic to the other. And something about attendance, you know, so people, like many of colleagues have mentioned that actually on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, you can see how many attendees are attending the session, and that should be fine for attendance purpose. In my opinion, I would recommend, you know, like old school, it's good to call out names and maybe ask for a hand raise. And I also announce to my students that your participation in these online polls or the hand raise feature, you know, I will use them as the evidence for attendance. Because, you know, it might happen that the student was there initially in the 15 minutes of the session, but then they moved away from their computer, right? So I announced this that, you know, just not in the beginning of the session, but as we proceed in the class, I will use these polls and hand raise options as the evidences for your attendance throughout the 3-hour session. The other thing I wanted to share with you, you know, so just some simple strategies to maybe try and develop a deeper connection with the students during these online sessions, like taking frequent pauses. You know, so if there is a 3-hour class, I suggest that we break it down into 30 or 40 minute sessions. We cover a few topics and give like a 5 minutes break. And if someone wants to use the restroom, drink water, and I also think it gives time to the students to assimilate all that new information. So, you know, they might need time to ask a question. So if we don't break this 3-hour class into some small segments, it might be too much for our students. You know, already this new platform is quite overwhelming for them. So I highly recommend breaking down the 3-hour class into 40-minute sessions or so with an intermittent 5 minutes break. The other feature, you know, so besides sharing your own files, you can also share a virtual whiteboard, just like we do in our in-person classes. Like I tend to use the whiteboard a lot, you know, especially for math faculty or science faculty. You know, if you're solving problems, just speaking verbally or showing it on a PowerPoint, students are not able to understand how you solve the problem. So it takes time to get your hand set on the whiteboard, but at least Blackboard Collaborate Ultra offers that option. And, you know, if there is a text option, you can just select the option of text and start typing in there on the whiteboard. So this has come in very handy for me, you know, using the whiteboard there, and that helps to keep the students engaged. For instance, you know, in one of my recent classes, I was covering the metric system conversion problems. So I was typing that on the chat, how I solved it. But then one student spoke up, Professor, can you do it on the whiteboard? I did it there, and I was glad that the student understood it then. And then 2 more students spoke up, Professor, can you do 2, 3 more problems on the whiteboard? So I think some of the old school, you know, things that we have used or that were used to teach us, we have to think of them right now as well. Also, I think Neetu talked about it a little bit, but then, you know, recording of these online classes is very important. because, in this difficult time, maybe some of our students are having trouble with the technology or the internet connection. So, recording the whole class so that it's there on Blackboard and they can view it later in the week again would be very helpful for our students. But then, when I tell them that I'll be recording the online class, I also, explain it to them that nothing replaces your time of instruction with your instructor. So, you might think, yes, recording is there. I'll just not attend the class. I'll see it later. But then who'll answer your questions on a recording? Who'll explain you the concept? So I encourage the attendance, even if the classes have gone online. But at the same time, I do record every class session. And, just to avoid some student privacy issues, in the beginning of the session, I make an announcement that please make your video option off, make it inactive, because the student might not be aware what's there, being shared on their computer on the background, and that can lead to privacy issues. So we should announce to our students to make their video inactive. And that way, it would be a normal instruction of the whole class lesson that we can record and put on Blackboard. So I highly recommend that. But I also suggest that, right now students are trying to learn this new platform. So we should probably not try to overwhelm them with the use of other new technology, right? So let them first get a hang of, let's say, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra in my case, or maybe some people are using Zoom. I personally really recommend Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. I really like it. But then, let's say there are limitations in every platform. So when you try to share files on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra for instruction purposes, you can share a PowerPoint file or a PDF. But let's say you prepared a handout, right, which is in a Word, which is a Word document. Then there's this option of even sharing your screen. So you could share the screen and show a file in any format. Instead of telling students, okay, you can find this somewhere else, we can just use the share screen option and show the files in other formats. And actually, somebody has a question?
Yeah, that was me, Richa. I was just looking at the questions in the chat. We have several really good questions. Is this a good time to ask them, or do you want?
Well, if the questions are regarding, how to use these features on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, then I would suggest that towards the end of our session, we'll have some 5-10 minutes to do that. But if there are some other questions, that I can answer right now, I would totally like to take them.
Let me put a couple of them out there because I think they're very relevant and probably on a lot of people's minds. So Rachel is asking, she's actually saying that her students have been reluctant, they've been hesitant to use video. And then we also have a question from Suzanne, who teaches at the English Language Center, which is an ACE program, and they don't have Blackboard. So she's wondering, will this session be applicable to people that are not using Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, but might be using some other tools?
Okay, so I'll take the first question. I'll take the first question, first. I think it's totally fine if students are reluctant to share their video, and even I'm suggesting that we should ask the students not to share their video, because if we are making a recording and we are putting it on Blackboard, a student may not like their home to be visible there, right? Or even their own picture. Face, so we should totally announce that please, I even suggest that the students should mute their audio so that the background noises and disturbances don't come up during the online class session. But yeah, when a student has a doubt, then I say you can interrupt anytime, you can unmute and ask your question, and I'll pause. But as such, I do recommend to switch off both audio and video from the student side.
So the video for them would be optional, right? You would let them know that it's going to be a recorded session, but they don't need to show their video.
Yeah, I would like to add that from the instructor point of view, you also have the ability to not let them, make their audio available and also their video. So you can do that at your end instead of, students, if you want them to be able to use those options, you can allow that. If you don't want those to be used, then you can also have that control at your end, if you don't want that. So you have like, because you are the instructor, so you have those kind of options.
Right. You can definitely, mute them and avoid any disturbance during the online session. Regarding the second question, so yeah, I mean, right now I'm talking about Blackboard Collaborate Ultra a lot. But then for some disciplines, if that option is not available, I'm pretty surprised to know that.
Yeah, I'm also, yeah.
It's not disciplines, it's adult and continuing education. So
see.
they're not credit programs, and unfortunately, they don't have the same access to the same tools that credit does. So, Suzanne, I don't know if you want to say what tools you do have access to. Suzanne from TELC, if you want to unmute.
I'm not sure yet. I know we have Zoom.
Okay, so it's very similar.
Right. So I think, all these options that I'm talking right now, like sharing a whiteboard, recording a session, these are applicable even to Zoom. So all these options are there. Sharing your screen, let's say you have a file in a different format. Actually, Neetu is using that right now to show you this PowerPoint, right? So all these options, I think most of these online platforms should actually offer.
They share
yeah.
So then you can also use Google Hangout, and there is also Skype. Some professors are using if there is a small class, or if you want to have one-to-one session. And yeah, so if you can also contact the IT, maybe they can also provide you some other options. But there are other options if the student do not have access. And you can also maybe might want to create a course. Maybe you can ask if the college can make you a course, and you can ask them to add the students. I don't know if that is a possibility, but you might want to talk to the Blackboard support, and maybe they can help you with some alternative option.
Yeah, I totally agree with Neetu on that, because in this dire time, things which were not conventionally done, and actually Blackboard support has been very prompt to replying to both students and us with any inquiry. So for ACE program, if this is not in place conventionally, maybe for the current session, you can ask that that please open a Blackboard course for our classes.
Another thing I would like to add, I also totally agree with Richa. I really like Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. The reason, one of the prime reason I like it, because students don't have to go to a different platform to access or go to their live class. Everything is in one place, They don't get confused. They know that everything is in one place. All they have to do is they have to go to their Blackboard, and that's it. They don't have to go anywhere else. Everything is in one place. So that causes a lot of, avoid a lot of confusion, because that is very important to keep the student engaged, because otherwise they will keep struggling with the technology. That is what my last point is about, less technology, So having the less technology and focusing more on the content, more on the delivery of the content, and your assessment and student, engagement, that those are the key elements, I would suggest to focus more. But again, because many faculties are learning this for the first time as well. So please, feel free to use what is comfortable for you. But over the time, you can also consider changing and trying new things if you would like. A few other things I would like to add, as Richa mentioned, attendance, there is also a report that you can generate after the class is done on Blackboard Collaborate. So that report will be able to let you know which student attended, including the time they were present. So for example, if student, just came in and they just, left, then they will let you know how long they were there in that live session. So I tell my student, you know what, I have your attendance report, and I will also know how long you were there. And I also, like Richa mentioned, I haven't done the poll, but I will try that, Richa. That is a good idea. But what I do is I tell them, just whatever question I'm asking, use the chat feature to answer those questions. And when I have a longer class, I take a pause in between and have some kind of informal, communication also, like how is everything, what did you do today, anything interesting you would like to share, so that they know that you're not just there as an instructor, but you're there as a person, to have that kind of presence. And
I would just like to add one point regarding that view reports. I realized that in my last class, I was thinking that there were all actually 24 students present in the online class session. But for some reason in the view report option, only 14 students I could see. So I would actually, that's why I would like to talk about it, that don't just rely on that. Making use of, like even name calling out names and asking for a hand raise or doing a poll, because when students submit their responses on poll, in the attendee category, it shows up, it pops up on the screen. So all these, and the session is being recorded. So you will have all these evidences actually, because for some reason in the view report, I could not see all the student names in my last class.
There are two options for that. You can create a session. So in that session, you should be able to see the student, but maybe that might be a technical glitch. Maybe we could ask the Blackboard support if they can address that question. Yeah, but then I didn't have that problem so far in my classes, but definitely that might be a question that we can ask to the Blackboard, what can be done in that case. Yeah, but online poll is great. That is another way to make sure that students were present. But the only point is that they will be only marking present at that, in that poll. Yeah, but yeah, there are various things that can be done. Absolutely.
So is there some other important question, Priscilla?
There are quite a few other important questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Javier is mentioning in regards to attendance, how can we come to understand if there are distant learning connection problems? And to what extent will this reflect in recording attendance and fulfilling it?
Yeah, so, like if there is a problem for a long time, a technical problem or internet problem at the student end, we were actually discussing this in our department recently, then I would suggest that, if the student is very proactive and sends you an email that professor, I'm having technical issues and I'm just not able to join the session, and actually it will show you during the session who has become inactive, a notification comes, and who is still logged on. So you can see, if it's a genuine issue, then you can offer, we have to be a little lenient right now with these things. So we can offer the student a chance that, if you go through the recording, because the recording would be saved on Blackboard. So in the week later on, if the student can go through the entire recording and maybe, answer one or two questions over email, then I would actually mark that student present for attendance. I think we'll have to lower down our standards from an in-person class right now a little bit, because just in view of the fact that this is a sudden change for our students, and they are having a lot of issues actually.
Okay.
And I agree with Richa, absolutely, because this is the, attendance, I wouldn't worry about attendance too much, but I also, would not discourage also, because otherwise, student might not just attend, many of them. So we have to find the right balance. Like, for example, Richa mentioned about online polls. I really like that, because that way, even if they're having technical issues, if they are there at least in one of the polls in the class, that might be really helpful to know that if the student was there, so maybe taking multiple polls,
Right.
in,
Exactly.
2-3 hour class. That is really good. I really like that online poll option. Another thing I would like to add before I forget is about, when you record the session, it might not become available right away. You will have to wait for some time. Sometime it take forever, For example, I recorded a session and it was not showing. I thought that maybe I did something wrong. But then in the evening, I saw it popped up. It was right there. I was like, wow, it takes, some time then. So the longer your video is, the longer time it will take. So don't be discouraged. Make sure you hit the record button, because otherwise it will not record. You have to hit the record button. It will not record automatically. You have to hit record button. So, and then once you're done with your lecture, you have to hit stop recording. And then you will have to wait for a few hours. Maybe sometime it can take even more, So for example, I had class yesterday in the afternoon, and my recording was available maybe by 8 or something. My class ended at 2. So just be patient, but it will be there. If you did, press record session, then it will be there. So just to let you know.
And we can actually show you these features towards the end of the session today. If people want to know, how to access a recording and even show it to their students, we can cover those things towards the end of the session today. Yeah.
Right.
So anything else, Priscilla, important? Or I see actually a few hand raises, and this is a Zoom session. So even this option is available on Zoom, raising the hand.
Oh yes, I just lowered my hand, but do you want to call on someone who has their hand raised?
I know, I
Nora?
know Nora had a question.
Yeah.
Maybe Nora, you want to speak up?
You'll have to unmute yourself, Nora.
In the very lower left corner, you got it.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
I'm a real neophyte here and very more stress than the students probably. But I just don't even, I set up, I didn't do Ultra, I did Zoom, but I guess it's the same thing. I'll try Blackboard Ultra. But when you do the PowerPoint, when you invite them to the meeting, you load it. I don't even know when you would load your content.
Mm-hmm. So you the same way you were doing earlier, that you post your files on the Blackboard content section, right?
Yes.
To
Yes.
do the same, as Neetu was saying, so that students have the PowerPoint file itself also without your voice. If they learn the course content better on their own just by looking at the file, so post it on the Blackboard content area only. But then once you have joined the online Blackboard Collaborate Ultra session, there is actually a feature, there's an icon of shared live content. So you don't have to post anything on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra beforehand.
Okay.
During the online session, you could add files.
I don't want to disturb you because I think I was going to try the Zoom because it seemed a little bit more accessible. I don't know, want to ask you the question there. If I did the Zoom, when would I post all my Blackboard stuff? All my stuff's on Blackboard.
Well, you'll have to use both the platforms then. You'll have to use the Blackboard, just like you have done earlier
Yes.
in the beginning, the content area. And then on Zoom, you will share your files during the online session.
So I click on them ahead of time or during the session? I'm
Nora,
sorry to be.
Nora, sorry to interrupt, but Nora, you can actually share your screen. So if you have your Blackboard open in your computer, you can just share your screen, and in the Zoom also it will show your Blackboard. I have done in my previous webinar. I was able to show my Blackboard, my one of the courses,
I just go to content and show my information.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
can. You have to just
Nora, we can show that probably to you towards the end of the session.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And thank you for bearing with me.
No
problem.
problem.
That is what Richa mentioned, that she will be able to see if we have the time, the Blackboard within the Zoom. So this is Zoom, but we will be able to show you our Blackboard there. So it
And
is.
by the way, colleagues have already conducted a webinar on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra.
Yes.
A recording of that is already available. So if you want to learn more specifics about Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, I highly recommend watching that webinar again.
Yes.
And by the way, that is on the webpage that I showed right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we move to the next slide?
Yeah, let's do that.
So go ahead, Richa.
Okay, so in the former slide, we were just talking to you about some options of fostering student engagement during the online class session when all the students are present together. But outside the class time, we can still keep them engaged, for being successful in the current course. And for that, here are some recommendations. So the first one is if it's an important assignment for your course, it's a high-stake assignment, then in this current time, everybody is facing so many issues. The students are also facing issues. We would recommend that, you provide a second chance to the student in terms of submitting the assignment. So sometime in the week, early in the week, you can have an initial date for submitting the first draft of that high-stake assignments. Let's say it's a research paper. A research paper usually has 7-8 sections. And to get a good grade, students have to do really well in all of those sections. So you can have an early date in the week, and then the instructor can provide feedback to the students, if there are certain elements which were lacking or how they can improve their work. And then we can have a later date in the week for a final submission. So that way, we can still keep our students engaged. It would really advance their learning, giving the feedback and giving them an opportunity to submit a revised version. And also they'll be able to do well in the current session, So we really recommend providing that option of feedback and submitting a revised version on high-stake assignments. Also, I would suggest that we can design some small extra credit activities or small assignments, worth of, let's say, 1 to 2% of course grade, right? This is again to encourage them and try to motivate them towards the course content. It could be a small exercise that we ask them to do, just like maybe some practice questions, 4 or 5 questions. If you make that handout, if the students do it, turn it in, then they can get 1% course extra credit, something like that.
Lenovo Vantage helps you get the most out of your device. You can keep.
Okay. Then, but if you think that designing and altogether a separate extra credit assignment is too much for individual students in your course, maybe they already have a lot of quizzes or something, then we would suggest that you can also design some group work. So, like in one of my courses, I teach on anatomy and physiology there. It's a pretty loaded course, right? So what I do is, as an extra credit assignment, it's a group presentation assignment. Every student makes 1 or 2 slides, so it's not too much burden on them. And then, if the students do their part in the group, they do it well, they can get 1% extra course credit. So we can design group assignments if the course is already pretty loaded. And then there's an option of a discussion board on Blackboard. So for these group assignments, you can make the discussion board active. Students can learn from each other. They can post their inquiries. Let's say in my assignment, they research on the human diseases and their distribution in different parts of the world, in different countries. So let's say they have a question, where will I find a reliable information? Then you would find them in scholarly articles or encyclopedias. And these are all available through our library website. So they need not come to the college physically to do these kind of assignments, right? They can be done using online resources. But let's say a student has a question, how do I use the library website to find a peer-reviewed article? Then, posting that on the discussion board will help the student get responses both from their peers and the instructors, and we can make it possible. So, these are just some of the options of how we can keep our student engaged even remotely, and I would highly recommend doing even our office hours online. Again, I personally like Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, but then that time I don't care for attendance because, just like our in-person office hours where 1 or 2 students show up and ask their questions, I say, guys, before the next class, on the previous class, if you have some questions, just join this session and one-on-one, I can address your doubts and clarify them. So I would say, we should also conduct our office hours online. And, besides replying to students over emails, having an online office hour would encourage them to actually prepare for the next class, right? So it will again contribute towards engagement. And those are some of the asynchronous engagement strategies that we came up with. I see that the chat is beaming up. So are there some questions on this?
By the time there is some question, just a few points that work in my classes about, the high stake assignment like this is the right time might be to do scaffolding assignments. That way, student can get some feedback and then they can improve. They will really appreciate it. If you can maybe give them some extra credit to submit early or giving them a chance to improve if they submit early, that really worked in my classes. And in my discussion board, I require my student to make their first posting by Wednesday of the week, and then reply to other students, at least 2 other students, by Sunday of the week, so that, I have them come into the Blackboard at least twice a week, so that keep them engaged virtually, remotely. So even though they are not in the class, but they are coming into the Blackboard, and not only they are coming there twice a week, because they are also replying to each other. So there is also peer interaction involved that keeps the student engaged. And students really appreciate the extra credit activities. So maybe have the extra credit activities in between the week. So that encourages them to come and log into the Blackboard, in between the week, not just in the end of the week. And, you can also ask them to have a journal and, make a commitment to themselves that I'm going to read this chapter today. Maybe provide them, like I said before, providing them some kind of tips and letting them write, in their journal, what they are going to do today, and maybe share some tips, with their peers, what is working for them, helping each other, like providing some kind of peer advice or something, that can really help the student to keep them engaged. Yeah.
So I think Suzanne has a question. Suzanne, can you unmute and ask?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. So I teach ESL and I teach a writing course. And in order to evaluate them during the semester as well as at the end of the semester, I need to have them do writing that's unassisted by dictionaries, by anything really. So in normal situation, I have them write on paper in class. Okay, because they can't use spell check, they can't use any kind of grammar checking. And it's really the only way to know if they understand how to write that I've come across. I'm racking my brain as to how to accomplish this online.
Well, the only thing I can think right now is you can ask them to write on a piece of paper and take a picture of that, you know.
Well, actually, I did that because we started online right at the end of our quarter, because our quarters are different from the credit quarters. And yeah, I did that. Some of it got really delayed. And I don't know whether it got delayed because it was being checked by someone else and then sent to me, or whether they actually have technology problems. But it's, you know, it.
So the other thing I could suggest is on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, you also have an option of private chat, right?
I don't have Blackboard though. I don't have access to it. So
I see.
Zoom also has that option, chat option.
So in any forum, you know, if you use the private chat, just like your in-person class, you can give like 5-10 minutes. I don't know how much time do you give in the in-person class to do such writing. You can ask students to, you know, type in their essay or whatever, a short piece in the private chat. And actually that doesn't autocorrect, you know. So if there are spelling errors or something, they would still.
Yeah, I just, you know, I love the honor system, but it doesn't work with all students.
And I think this is a serious issue, actually.
Yeah, I mean, they can have their phone within eyeshot and be checking things on the dictionary and.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are some things that you really cannot control.
What you can do is like give, like maybe like an oral presentation, you know, like you give them the question, you know, when you are talking to them, you know, over the audio, just, you know, give them the question right there and then they will answer right there. So they don't have the
this
time.
is a writing class.
She's talking about writing.
Yeah, that might be an issue. Maybe whatever they are writing, maybe they can
I
just.
think it is an issue.
So I'll say something, Suzanne. If we come up with something, we'll actually contact you over email. Okay.
Okay.
That
would be wonderful.
Let's move to our next slide that we would like to talk about. Yeah.
So you basically, you know, in the interest of time, I'll just wrap up this quickly. I mean, the main point I wanted to say through the slide is that we need to be a little bit flexible in the current session, you know, and, you know, in terms of, let's say, we should ask even our students for their feedback and suggestions. You know, we might be thinking that, okay, we have standardized everything on Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, but there might be diversity in the class. You know, one student might be very well adept with the use of digital technology, but the other student might be slow in grasping the online session. You know, like the case I was telling you about, a student requesting solve the problem on the whiteboard, right? So others, 21 students could get it on the chat when I was solving it. So we have to take into account all those diverse issues. We have to be patient. Our students have to be patient. And sometimes actually students give very nice suggestions, you know, like on one of the class topics, you know, I never thought that I should give some practice questions, but soon after the Collaborate Ultra session, a student said, Professor, can you give us some homework on practice questions on this topic? And I think that would help and benefit the whole class. So besides this, you know, let's say you are doing everything you could do, but then in spite of this, due to, you know, resource availability issues, or in general, the students are not getting accustomed to the online platform. If the whole class is not doing well in the section, in your entire section, then I think we have to get flexible to the extent of even revising our course plan, right? Like I was reading on one of the threads, I think it was an English faculty who said that all quizzes would be replaced by essays.
Yeah.
And students were very happy.
Even syllabus is revised, so yeah.
So I think we'll have to coordinate that with our course coordinators and the department chair. If such issues crop up in a section, and a flexible approach would be the way to go ahead.
Because student performance will let you know, if they are struggling with the technology or what kind of problems they are having. Maybe provide them a survey. You can give them a survey. There are so many tools that you can use to provide them a survey. Give them a survey and let them know about their input so far. And then maybe based on that survey result, you can modify some of your methodology and assessment procedures. So that is what I'm going to talk about next. I'm going to talk about, the assessment strategies, like maybe having like less number of high stake assignments in this particular semester because of the unusual situation. Because students are more engaged when you give low stake assignments, because that way, they are not, they're not scared of, they might get a bad grade or something. They just participate more freely, and without any fear, in the low stake assignment. So have more low stake assignment to improve the engagement in the class. And clarity of assignment is very important, because right now we are not meeting in person, so we cannot explain them in detail. So but you can definitely do that virtually. Maybe provide as much detail as possible through email and within the assignment about what you're expecting, or maybe provide like a sample of what you are looking for, and providing them some hints that will encourage them and keep them engaged, and not discourage them not to do the assignment if it is too hard for them to understand. So clarity is very important. And also let them also giving them the opportunity to ask questions. So I post my assignment on Monday and have them submit by Sunday, so that they have ample opportunity to ask any question. So I give them ample time, not like unlimited time, but like 1 week or so. And also be available for additional help. Refer them to peer tutoring, because peer tutoring is also online, just to let you know. So you can also provide additional help through virtual office hours, or refer them to peer tutoring. And those things can be very helpful to keep the student engaged. And also providing clear submission for the submission, because now submission is different. Before, student could submit on paper in the class, but now that cannot be done. So they are going to submit everything online. So you have to be very clear with the submission process. Maybe if you can provide them some tutorial, you can make a video how to submit, so that it can walk them through the process. Or if it is too much work for you, just refer them, if you have any problem submitting your work, just email to the Blackboard support, and Blackboard support will let them know how to submit their assignments and how to take the quizzes. So those kind of problems might occur in an online distance learning platform. So that is very important as well.
Great. Can I bring in another question from the chat?
Yes, please.
I know that you had covered this and in different ways, but maybe it's good to kind of just reiterate some of it. So Javier is asking, what are your best suggestions to encourage student engagement? This is an element of the education experience that is now lacking, no longer being in a normal classroom setting. And I know you had many good ideas about that, but maybe just go over a few of the top ones that you would recommend.
So yeah, I would say that, if you're conducting your session online, the main thing would be break down the session into smaller segments. Don't just keep it continuous for 3 hours, the students would be lost. And I think we'll have to take pauses and check on students from time to time. Either we ask for hand raisers or do online poll. That would ensure to us that they are still on the session. And I think the students also reciprocate very nicely. I have actually started enjoying these sessions more now, because especially the quieter population of students who we had difficulty trying to make them speak even in class. They are trying to they type on the everyone chat option now. Even if they don't want to speak up, they don't want to make their audio active, they are typing on the chat. So I think taking pauses, asking for students if they are still on board with you, they are understanding what you are teaching them. And I would say using multiple formats, keep posting your instructional material through Blackboard content area. But, if you have made some new slides or made some new videos, then share them during the online class as well.
One asynchronous methodology I would suggest is, highly suggest, is discussion board. I have been teaching online from past 10 years. That is so excellent and that has worked really well in my classes. Discussion board, because as I said, you can spread the posting into, like they have to come twice a week. Like first posting should be made on Wednesday and reply to other students by Sunday. And that way they are coming into the Blackboard twice a week, at least, and also communicating with the students. So that way, that is one of the best strategy, that I think is very useful in distance learning.
And I would say add to that, send your periodic announcements through Blackboard for the upcoming session. You might think, oh, I sent the instructions how to join a session for my first class. But, they might have forgotten, or they might not know how to join the next session. So we have to periodically send announcements through Blackboard on how to join the session, make recording of those sessions, so that students can view it again later in the week before their next class. These are some of the strategies, and maybe even designing some extra credit, small activities or assignments to encourage them, to hang on and not just give up.
Just motivating them. Yeah, absolutely. So the last slide that we have is do the best you can. This is applicable not only for the instructor, but also for the students. So communicate with your peers. So, as an instructor, you might also be feeling overwhelmed. So it is, you can communicate with your colleagues, with your department chair, with your course or program coordinators. Maybe they can also provide you some useful tips that is working in their classes. So whenever you feel like that, it is always a good idea, to talk to your peers, email them with, if you have any questions, maybe they can provide you any solution, helping each other. If your colleague is struggling to understand, some of the feature in Blackboard or Zoom, maybe helping them, or maybe seek help from them. There are so many people who are there to help you. Be kind to yourself. It is okay if you're taking some time to learn something. The same thing is also applicable for the student. Remind them it's okay. We are there for you. Keep reminding them so that, they are still, motivated. And it is okay not to be perfect, with the technology, and it's okay because we are, going through unusual situations right now. So it is okay not to be perfect. And have everyone have their unique way. You might be hearing from your colleagues that, oh, I'm using Zoom, I'm using Blackboard Ultra. Yeah, everybody, they have unique way. So it is not necessary that we have to do, what other people are doing. Just do, what works for you and what is good for your class. Everybody have their unique way. Everybody, every person is unique. And please take time to relax, like Richa said, taking pauses in between the live lecture also. And reminding the student, to take some time, to do some meditation, or maybe, listening to some song, in between. So just let them know that, we are there for them, and also take time to relax yourself, because this is already very stressful, and that is the, best we are doing, and it is very important at that time.
And I would just add that, if in the last 5 minutes of our online classes, we can take out time to ask students, if they have some worries regarding the current situation, try to make them comfortable and reiterate what the state governor is saying, right? Because not everybody is listening, and that's why the cases are so rapidly increasing. So if we can, educate our students, remind them that, maintain social distance, and don't step out of the house too much. I feel it's our responsibility as well. And I think we are running out of time, but do we have 1 or 2 minutes to show, some of the attendees like Nora how to?
Yeah, I also see that Rachel has her hand raised. I don't know,
Yeah,
Rachel,
she had. Rachel, you may go ahead and
do you
speak up.
still have the question?
Okay.
My question was, I also teach a writing class, and I had intended to have my students do free writes during class. And so, I'm thinking, okay, if you give them 5 minutes to do a free write, can a few of them share what they've written, and then the others put them in a folder of some kind, like a Google Docs folder, to just send them to me so that it's not so dispersed. People otherwise have been sending me emails with their work, or on the discussion, or is the discussion board a reasonable tool to do that, to gather together something as informal, really, as a
Oh yeah,
student. Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You
Yeah,
can
the-
Do you use Google Doc folders? How can they? How do they interface with the Blackboard Ultra? I don't understand.
So in the Blackboard, just to be clear, Blackboard Ultra is a platform where you can have live session, and Blackboard Ultra is within Blackboard. So you can use
Yes.
Blackboard for asynchronous, methodology, but within the Blackboard you also have a synchronous tool, which is called as Blackboard Ultra.
Yeah.
So
No, I'm using that.
okay. So to answer your question, absolutely, whatever you are doing in Google Doc, you can do that in discussion board. So you are saying that you want to share you want the student to be able to share some files?
I want them to read a few things that they've written, and then I would like them to upload what they've written and send them as a group to me.
Yeah, you can do group work. Absolutely, you can do group work. So for example, when you create a discussion board, then you can ask the student to create a thread. So maybe a group can create a thread, and in that thread, they can share, what you want them to share between that group. So absolutely,
Okay.
you can do that.
So
And there
a
is
group
other
thread.
feature, group work, that is also you can try.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
I'll try a group thread.
Yeah. If you have any question, you can email me or Richa or anybody from CTL and so just let us know, and we can try to find specific information for you, and then let you know.
And speaking
Thank you.
about discussion boards, there is going to be a Blackboard session, a Q&A Blackboard session this coming Friday at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And it's going to focus on discussion boards and grade center. So Jetmir and Jose from the Blackboard team are going to be joining us on a live session. I will be sending that information via email shortly after this session, but it's going to be on Friday at 2 p.m. And we hope to make these Q&A sessions more frequent every week, focusing on a specific features of Blackboard. And the first two coming up this Friday are discussion boards and the Grade Center.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, so should I share the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra screen?
Yeah, I think if folks
Okay.
have a few minutes, I
We
think
still have
absolutely.
a few people here.
Yeah, so let me, Richa, you may go ahead and share your screen.
Okay.
And you will be able to select the browser where you have Blackboard Ultra, and you can show us a few features over there as well.
Sure. So
Me and Richa are in love with Blackboard Collaborate Ultra.
We've noticed.
Because it is free, you don't have to pay anything. It is already there for the student and for you. You don't have to pay anything.
I think also it is nice when students don't have to go to a lot of different
Everything one place.
places.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though there are advantages and disadvantages between Zoom and Collaborate, I would say.
Yeah.
And we're learning what they are, but it is nice that students can get there from Blackboard.
Yes.
no, I think Priscilla is absolutely right. There are pros and cons of every platform.
Yeah.
But then just to briefly show you, I've joined the session that I created for Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And, in the bottom, there are these icons through which any participant, whether it's the instructor or the students, can either, make the audio active or inactivated, the video active, or, you can make the video inactive. And this is the hand raise option. But before I go ahead with that, I wanted to show you this collaborate panel. So here, the second option is of attendees. So, during our online class, how many students are attending, you'll see. But then if they move away from the computer, you would not know that. But if periodically, let's say you ask for a hand raise, right now I'm the only attendee in this session. If I do hand raise, it shows me a purple color, raised hand there. So I know that, okay, these students are physically attending the session. They are on the computer. And then, this is that chat option, the everyone chat, where the whole class can type in, where the students can ask questions, the instructor can reply or could just speak. But then this third icon in the panel, collaborate panel, is very useful. So if we click on that, we can share different types of content. And if I click on the very first option, there's this option of sharing the blank whiteboard. So let's say, if I want to explain something, I choose the text option. You can pick up a color. You can make the font big or small. And then you can start, typing something. Let's say, you are doing some numerical problem. So it should be at a font that all students can see it. So there are all those features there. But let's say now after some time during the online class,
that erasing feature, tell them about that is a cons.
Yeah, so you cannot do partial erase here. So let's say after this I use the
I have to write everything
drawing
again.
tool or something. I'm showing them what's a columnar epithelial cell. There are long cells, right, with the nucleus at the bottom. But I cannot erase this partially. If I choose the erase option, everything gets erased. So yeah, that's one little bit frustrating point, but I still believe it's pretty handy, pretty useful. Then there's this option of sharing files. So as Nora was asking, if similar feature is there on Zoom, but then on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, in real time, you can add a file. So let's say I'll just pick up some file here right now. Okay, and then you could say share now, so it will show it to the students, right? So you can share files in real time. You don't have to upload them beforehand. But I still recommend uploading your instruction material on the content area of Blackboard.
One thing, Richa, can you go to that one page again that can you share that again?
Sure.
And I just want to let them know, you can also write right here. You can also use the point. There is a hand over there. You can also use that as a pointer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so you can highlight things. That's great. But let's say, as you can see in this option of sharing files, it says you can only share PowerPoint PDF files, right? But let's say if it was a Word document, then you could choose the option of sharing the screen.
Yeah.
And if I do that, then, whichever file I want to show to the students. I have a Word file right now. And that way, students can see even a Word document. So I think it has many cool features. And the last one I wanted to share about is, doing the polls. So let me stop sharing and show you right now. So in the polls, you can either type in a multiple choice question. You can add multiple choices for the student to respond, or you can choose a yes or no question, So have you understood the concept? And when you're recording the session, then even the polls are recorded. So right now I'm the only attendee, and okay, let me say no, I haven't.
Are you present? And if they say yes, that is attendance,
Yeah. So we can say start, and that way, since I'm the only attendee, and if I haven't understood the concept, I can tell my professor, and a new icon of poll opens up, and we can see, how many responses were yes or no. And accordingly, we can take the next step in our instruction. So
about the groups, there is also breakout groups in the end. Yeah.
So let's say if you are planning for a group assignment, then, you can make right now, I think it provides an option of maybe 2 groups, but you can add, you can have 3 or more groups. You can, when you have more attendees, right now I'm the only one, then you can assign different students to different groups.
Actually, it auto select. You don't even have to assign if you don't have that much time to assign.
Okay.
It auto selects. I saw that yesterday.
I see.
Yeah, it auto.
But the last feature I wanted to cover is how to record a class session, right? So on the top left, there is this icon of open session menu. And the very first option is start recording. So if I do that, the session is being recorded. But then at the end of your class, you'll have to physically go and say stop recording. And as Neetu was mentioning, it usually takes some time for the recording to show up on your Blackboard. So how to access a recording on Blackboard? This is my Blackboard page for a particular class that's not currently active. It's not available to the students, so I'm using it. But then basically, under this option of course tools, we have Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And then here we go and create our sessions. I hope you guys are already aware of it, or please see the webinar on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra on how to create a session. But then how to access a recording, for that you have to click on this icon of menu on the top left. and then we can choose recordings. So right now you see, I did a very brief recording, but even that's not showing up. I believe it will take at least few minutes for that to come. And especially if it's a 3-hour class, sometimes when I do the online session for the class in the afternoon, only by night can I see the recording. So we should inform our students that the recording will be available only after a few hours or so.
One thing I would like to add, can you go back to the previous one? So in this green area, I don't know if I'm able to show my cursor, but in this green area, you can actually add a tool that says Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So that student will be able to see that, because that is very important. Otherwise, they won't be able to see it.
Right. So for us, I mean, students only see the green area, right? So for them, they should join a session? They should actually go to tools in their particular class section on Blackboard. Then they have to click on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and then they'll see a particular session created. Like, for today's webinar, I created this practice run. So once they hover over this session that has been created, and they go to the right, there's this icon of a circle with 3 dots. The very first option then over there is join session. So the students can join the session, but they can only access Blackboard Collaborate Ultra through this option of tools in their course page on Blackboard.
They can create actually a tab here that can actually say Blackboard. If you go to that plus sign on the top above the green area, if you click on that plus sign, go to the tool link. If you go to the tool link, and then you will drop down, you will have Blackboard Collaborate.
Right.
And if you hit the achievement, it will show Blackboard. If you go to the drop down, it will show you, and that will be shown actually as a tab.
Yeah. So actually during, my first class or first 2-3 classes, in the first 5 minutes, I always do this. I share my screen. I go to my course section on Blackboard, and I show them how students will join the session. They have to click on tools, and then they have to click on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, and then we all are on the same page. Whatever session has been created, they'll join it.
Make sure you have the student view on. Otherwise, they will show it will be shown everything, and they might be confused. So this is the student view. Can you show them the student view? Yeah. So that's it. So you have to hit there, because that is what you want to show to your student. Otherwise, they will say everything, what you see at your end. So they might be confused. Yeah.
So if there are any other questions, then, we'll quickly take them. But otherwise, thank you all for joining us today.
For your time.
Yeah.
It was a great session, and thank you, Neetu and Richa.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
everyone for coming.
Yeah, stay safe, everyone. Take care of yourself.
Yes.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Neetu.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good
Bye.
afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.